I'm Alexis, aka The Soft Reader, and I'm here today to do a video where I compare some US edition of books versus UK edition of books. I kind of hinted I wanted to do this video a couple of months ago when I did my international editions collection. I will link that video down below. And so basically, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do today. So I have 3 books that I own that I have the US edition. Obviously I live in the US, so most of my editions are US editions, but these are ones that I very distinctly chose over buying the UK edition, and then I have 3 books that are the UK editions that I specifically bought on Book Depository because I wanted those specific editions. So I figured I would do this and just compare like why I liked one edition over the other or anything like that. If you guys are interested in seeing more of these, please let me know down below. I do have quite a few other UK editions and or US editions that I really like, so just let me know. The first one I'm going to start with is a US edition that I really like, and this is the US paperback tour edition of the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. These are the tall, really floppy US paperbacks with cover art by Sam Weber. I will put up a picture of what the UK editions of this book series look like. I can tell you that the UK edition I feel like is much more popular on BookTube. I personally don't really like the UK editions for 2 reasons. The first being that they're much shorter, I believe, in like height, and I've heard from people who own those editions that they're nowhere near as floppy as these are, and like floppy paperbacks are like my favorite kind of paperback. And it's actually quite funny because I think this is actually true for all of the Mistborn covers, where I end up really liking the cover of books 1 and book 2, and I hate the cover of book 3. That's with the UK edition, that's with the other really traditional looking US paperback version, that's with these editions as well. I don't know what it is, but it's like I'll really like book 1 and I'll really like book 2, but then for some reason I hate the cover of book 3 and I'm like, this looks terrible. But ultimately the like size and like construction of these was a huge factor for me, but I also just really love the like covers of these ones as well. I really like the artistry in these, and I really like kind of what it picks and chooses from the series to highlight without being like overly spoilery or too minimalistic, which is what I feel like is the case with the traditional US ones and the UK ones. I feel like the UK ones really don't tell you anything about the series, like from first glance, I feel like. But then I feel like the US ones are too cluttered, so that's why I really like the Sam Weber versions. Not to mention, again, how many times can I say it? Look how floppy these are. Freaking cool. Alright, the next one I'm going to mention is a UK version that I really like, and that is the UK version of Release by Patrick Ness. I will of course put up a copy of the US cover. This is definitely a case where I really like both covers. I think both covers are very strong covers, but ultimately I just love this cover so much more, and I think it's for a multitude of reasons. The first being that I really love the minimalist cover for this book, and I also feel like this cover just really fits the story for me, and I love the color palette in this. I like how the title is like almost hidden because it's not colors that stand out, and just, yeah, I just really think this is like a gorgeous edition. Again, I think the US edition is really pretty too, but I don't think it has like, it can even compare to like the work of art that is this cover for me. So yeah, so I did obviously get the UK edition of this one. The next one I'm going to mention is another US edition I really like, and that is the US edition of This Savage Song and its subsequent book, Our Dark Duet by Victoria Schwab. This is another case where I feel like the UK one is nice, but I don't feel like it's nearly as pretty as this edition for me. The typography on this cover is probably my favorite typography on a book ever. It's just so gorgeous. But I also just love the various shades of red and the contrast with the dark black and how it's like overlaid onto a violin silhouette. Like, I just think that this is such a pretty cover. And like, don't get me wrong, like I don't think the UK one is ugly. Like, I'm not saying like the UK one's gross looking. It's not. I still think that one is really pretty, and I think all of the Schwab's UK books look really nice together. Like, they all kind of fit really well together. But I just love this one. This one is just so pretty. Like, everything about it, again, like the color scheme, the imagery, the distinct imagery, the typography, it's all just really lovely together and individually, like broken down as parts. So I went with this one as another US pick I prefer. The next one I'm going to mention is one that I feel like people don't typically mention when they talk about like US UK covers, but it was a UK cover I like knew I wanted to own. And that is the UK edition of And I Darken by Kirsten White. Again, I'll put up the US cover. The US cover to me is really pretty. Again, like I don't think it's an ugly cover. I just don't think the cover for me is as dynamic and as bold looking as these covers are. These are one of those situations where I actually like the person on the cover, and I feel like because this cover is really like dark, because it's dark. Like the whole cover is dark, but I also feel like the contrast is really low considering there's white and the red. Like they don't stand out that much, but I feel like it works really, really well. And I can't speak on like, because I know this book you know, does actually represent a culture. So I don't know, I can't speak on like how the culture is represented in this image. I can just say that I do think it's a nice image and I think it works as like a visual thing. But again, like I can't speak on whether or not this is like appropriate for the culture or if it's like true to like the culture that's represented in this book. But I can tell you I really like this cover, and I do think it's a really pretty cover, and I love the cover of the subsequent books just as much in the UK editions. The only complaint I have is these UK editions are not floppy in the least, prone to broken spines. So the next one I'm going to mention is another US one I really like, and that is Nevernight by J. Kristoff. I love the US covers of this. I feel like the UK covers of this one are a lot more popular. And like the UK cover is another one where I feel like it's really gorgeous. But for me, this image is so much more compelling and is so much more dynamic. Like I look at this and I'm like, holy crap, I want to know what this story is about. You know, I want to know who this girl is. I want to know her story. Where I feel like that's not the case for me in the UK edition. The UK edition I look at and I'm like, wow, that's really pretty, but it doesn't compel me. All it's like is it's like a pretty thing to look at, but it doesn't really compel me to pick up the story, which is where I feel like the main difference is for me with the two covers of this series. Also, I don't own God's Grave, but I believe with this series, when you line them up, they kind of make an image on the side. I've seen them together in the store, and I want to say that's the case. But yeah, I love the US editions of Nevernight and God's Grave as well. I just think the US editions are so much more compelling for me personally. And the last one I'm going to mention is another UK edition that I really like, and that is the UK edition of Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. This is another case where I really like the US cover as well. I think the US cover has a really dynamic image, but I just love this. Like, this to me is just so pretty and it's so chilling, and I feel like the US edition of Red Sister is something I've seen before. Like, when I wasn't wowed when I saw it, purely because I was like, oh, I kind of feel like this is something we have seen before. I mean, like, I could even argue that like it kind of has the same vibe of a lot of other YA books that are in the fantasy genre, even though I don't think the story necessarily is one we've seen before. The cover to me feels like something we've seen before. But I love this cover. This cover to me is really minimalistic, but it's also kind of haunting because it's like chilly. And it's also a really, really tall paperback that I like, though unfortunately, again, these UK paperbacks are not, you know, floppy. But I just love this image, honestly. I'm really excited to see what the UK sequel to this book is going to look like. I've actually already seen the US cover of the sequel, which is Grey Sister, and I love the US cover. Like, the US cover for book 2 is gorgeous. And so it's like, I'm really interested to see what book 2 is going to look like in this, because then I'm going to need to decide, like, do I want book 2 to match, or do I want book 2 to look the one I think looks better? So I'm a little curious to see what the UK edition of this one is, or the sequel is going to look like. But I love this. I just think that this is really, really pretty, and this speaks to me on some level for some reason. And I don't know, this is a situation for me where I feel like minimalist works. Alrighty guys, so those were 3 US and 3 UK editions that I preferred over the counterpart. I would love to know which UK or foreign editions, if you live in the US, that you really, really love, or if you don't live in the US, which US editions you really, really love. I upload videos on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. If you like what I do, please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys soon with another video. Bye!